Electricast.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Hyundai. Think you know what an electric vehicle should be? Think again. From the charge time and range in the Ioniq 5 and 6 to the 601 horsepower Ioniq 5N, Hyundai is redefining what EVs should be. Learn more about Hyundai EVs at HyundaiUSA.com. EPA estimated 303-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 5 SE SEL limited rear-wheel drive and 361-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 6 SE long-range rear-wheel drive with fully charged battery. Actual range may vary.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with LynAnn Weaver. LynAnn is a powerhouse in transforming leadership and performance with more than 15 years of experience in leadership, business development, and high-performance coaching. As the founder of LynAnn Weaver Coaching and CEO of Healthcare Elevation Partners, she doesn't just aim to change the game for healthcare professionals. Her vision encompasses revolutionizing success and equipping her entrepreneurs, leaders, and executives across all industries with the tools and strategies to build their foundation for personal and professional elevation. With an MBA in Healthcare Administration from the University of Colorado, a certification from the High Performance Institute as a certified high performance coach, and a career backed by a track record of steering operational success, fostering strategic expansion, and igniting cultural shifts in a variety of sectors, LynAnn has made a tremendous impact in her relentless pursuit to elevate human potential and achievement. I am really excited to have you on the show today, so welcome, LynAnn.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you have such an impressive background, and I just want to just get right into the conversation. So I'm just going to dive right in. You have built an incredible career in leadership, business development, and high-performance coaching. Can you take us back to the beginning? What led you to this work, and were there any pivotal moments that shaped your approach to leadership and performance?
Yeah, and there were several. So my background is in healthcare administration, and I've been in leadership roles for about 15 years. During that time, I really started noticing, you'd asked about the pivotal moment, but during that time, I'd really started noticing the differences between our high performers and our, we'll just call them less than high performers. The ones that weren't quite excelling, the ones that were more frustrated, that would get shaken really easily. They would not necessarily hit their goals or, oftentimes started out really well, and then you would start to see a dip, both in their performance as well as their outcomes. And then you have this other group of our high performers, which showed up to work energized almost every day. They were excited to be there. They'd be up against the same challenges and stressors that first group was, but they handled it and experienced it so dramatically differently. They would still knock their goals out of the park and would really just be that lighthouse for the rest of the team. And so as I worked with more and more people that fall into those two categories, I started to recognize different trends and maybe some of the things that the high performance group is doing quite differently than the lower performing group. And we had one weekend in particular that really set the trajectory for me to leave healthcare administration and start coaching, because I realized that I could make a bigger difference doing what I do now than what I ever could as a hospital CEO, which was the track that I was on previously. And that weekend was everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, from it being a full moon that actually does impact the number of strokes, heart attacks, and deliveries that you have, and to miscommunication from EMS, which was before they ever got to the hospital, to us being short staffed, having product delays, and just all sorts of challenges. And it all just came to a head one weekend. And that Monday morning after that situation happened, I went into the office super early and I ended up having some pretty deep, hard conversations with two of our amazing physicians that both almost decided to leave medicine. And at that point, I went, oh my gosh, something has to change. There's challenges that people are dealing with. And this one group that is excelling and thriving, how do we help give those tools and strategies to this other group that's struggling, facing the exact same challenges? And so that's when I started diving into everything I could get my hands on, every program I could go to. I went through, I can't even tell you, I've spent probably over $100,000 on leadership development and personal growth and development programs and business growth trainings and all sorts of things to be able to discover how to actually help that group that's not excelling in every area of their life actually move into high performance, which is what we define as achieving heightened levels of sustained success over the long term without sacrificing your health, your well-being, or your positive relationships.
I love that. And we're so much in alignment that way because I really truly feel like if we can find ways to help ourselves have that quality of life. And I think that's a lot of times, even from the industry that I came from, which was in law, a lot of the people that I still talk to still have those issues of, high performance, high productivity, but they're not taking care of themselves as well. So they're working long hours, they're stressed, they're exhausted. And it's like, how do you find a way to have that quality productivity and still have a life outside of it? And I think that's one of the reasons why I actually stepped away from working in corporate full time, because I realized that I couldn't have that quality of life in the industry that I was in because it was so much focused on high productivity over my well-being. Like my life revolved around work, and I didn't feel good. I was always stressed and didn't feel good about myself, about my life, and a lot of things suffered. And so I love the fact that you recognize that being in the industry that you were in, that you could actually have a farther reach by stepping away from just being in one environment and being able to reach multiple environments, which is what you do. You go across industries and you help other people. So, which really leads me to my next question. You're a woman who wears many hats. And so you're leading, you're growing your business, you're managing your personal priorities. I know that decision fatigue can become a real challenge for people, especially like you were saying, you have the high performers who are thriving, and then you have those who are finding it very challenging. So, as women, how can we, especially in the leadership space, navigate this and make confident decisions faster without second guessing or draining our energy?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things. So, when we're making decisions, the first place to start is getting 100% clear on the outcome that you're working towards. What are your specific goals? What are the KPIs to achieve those goals? And then what steps actually need to be taken to get there? Once we know that, and that goes for both personal as well as professional, right? Without that roadmap, it's really hard to make good decisions without overthinking or overanalyzing. And once you identify what those key pieces are, it's looking at how do I most effectively prioritize the steps and actions that I'm taking? Are there ways that I can automate the lower impact decisions? Are there things that we're doing or our team can be doing and putting it on into a system so that it doesn't even have to go against our decision fatigue or, towards the decisions that we're making every day, because that starts to reduce the cognitive load that we're processing consistently if we have things already pre-mapped out, already written down, and it's not taking up so much of that bandwidth. The other, and one of the biggest pieces in this too, is how do you cultivate the proper neurochemical environment to where you're not experiencing stress as rapidly or as intensely as you would in other neurochemical environments? And so when I talk about that, what I mean is, well, I'll back up. There was a study done out of Harvard called the Happiness Advantage, and it showed that people who are in a positive neurochemical state, or a positive state that we would experience as something like joy or excitement or a positive emotion, are actually up to 31% more productive than those who are in a negative or even a neutral state. And so one of the first things to be able to do to really elevate the decisions that we're making is getting in a positive neurochemistry. So how do I boost my joy? What is something that I can do to put myself in that positive state so that I can go into it clear-minded? And the reason that this is important is because when we are coming from a place of stress or fatigue or anything else that we would experience as negative, our brain actually downregulates the regions that are responsible for higher level cognitive processes. And when we're in that place of positive neurochemistry or, joy, it actually upregulates them. So we're more effective and faster at coming up with creative solutions to problem solving. That same study referenced that physicians are actually 19% faster at determining an accurate diagnosis when they're in that positive neurochemical state as opposed to negative or neutral. And also the way that we prioritize the decisions that we're making. What is truly going to make the biggest impact? I like to do this by planning out, the month, week, and daily activities. And at the end of every day and week, I'll review whatever I had accomplished, what still needs to be done, and looking at the next day as what are the top 3 things that are most critical to achieving my end goal or my end result. With those 3 things, as long as I know that I am getting those done, it helps keep that momentum up because you get that little mental pat on the back that we often don't get when we're looking at this entirely long list of overwhelming number of to-dos. And then along with that too is focusing on or following that 80-20 rule of really focusing on the 20% of the decisions that create the majority of your results. So what are those needle moving activities that are actually going to make the biggest difference versus the ones that maybe just make you feel like you're being productive because you're busy, but it's not actually moving the needle? Email is often one of those culprits. We want to be responsive or we want to be engaged and viewed as a high value team member or leader. And so we're constantly answering email. Well, if we're switching between tasks, for example, to be able to be readily accessible, it actually decreases our effectiveness for focus on what we're working on in that moment. And so if I'm actually just constantly going back to my email every few minutes to check it to see if I'm needing to respond to something, it disrupts our workflow. And it's also not as effective because it makes it easier for us to get kind of sucked down into that rabbit hole of non-productive work. How many emails are actually truly urgent? So in this example, what are having a system for ranking the urgency of your emails, whether that's by a person, whether that's by a topic, if you know that you're expecting something, or if you're waiting on something from a person to be able to move the needle forward, that would be the first thing that you check. Set a timer for whatever time allotment you have. So if you're following a time blocking, like 15 minutes, 25 minutes, even up to 50, this is what I'm going to go through, and this is my order of prioritization to knock all of those out. When that timer goes off, it doesn't matter. I am done and I move on to the next thing. And we follow that just like we would if you had a hard stop because of a meeting, and holding yourself accountable to that can also really free up some of that emotional bandwidth. The other piece in this is to be able to do resets regularly throughout the day. So we know from neuroscience that we're actually a lot more productive and able to focus more when we take short micro breaks throughout the day. And so I usually follow the rule of 50, where every 50 minutes, so 50, set a timer. At the end of that 50 minutes, take at least a 5-minute break. 2 minutes, closing your eyes, it allows your brain to kind of reset, regenerate, not be overwhelmed with that cognitive load, and then doing some deep breathing, which can help bring that stress response back to baseline so that you can more easily get into that neurochemical state. Get up, get some water, get moving a little bit, and it really gives you that opportunity to reset, decreasing cognitive load, and being able to come back to that next work block completely focused and ready to make those high impact decisions and execute high impact actions.
Yeah, I love that idea around the joy. I always talk about joy too. I also talk a little bit about energy management as
Yeah.
well. I talk a lot about energy management and, how like what is 80% of what you're doing is using most of your energy. Like that's how I kind of look. It's like, because a lot of the time we're putting a lot of energy into things and how we structure, which I love the fact that you talk about structure is so important. And I also believe that it also plays into our energy because some people have what I call marathoners. They have the ability to actually have bigger blocks of times put into their days so that they're able to actually do a little bit more within that time block than someone who needs more breaks, which is the sprinter like myself. I know I need more breaks. So I'd be like you too. 50 minutes, I would take a break because I know that if I don't, I'm just not going to be really good in the next thing that I set myself on to do. And I love that idea around having that timer. I think I have had some people say to me that it's really hard for them, especially when they get so hyper focused. But again, it's like, okay, if that's the case, is take your timer, like if you have one of those timers or even your phone, and move it across the room because it's going to go off. You're going to have to get up and go turn it off. So that's going to be that mental stop. It's going to tell you, oh, it's time. Either you let it continuously go, or it's going to bother you enough. You're going to get up and go turn it off. But I love that. And one of the things I did want to talk about, because you did bring up the accountability piece, and I think that's really important, is holding ourselves accountable, which can be really super hard because, again, as I was saying, when it comes to the timer, I'm working with someone right now who talked about, well, I've used my phone, I've tried other things. And I said, well, have you tried actually putting your phone on a table somewhere else where you actually have to get up and go and physically turn it off because then that is like snapping you out of being in that hyper focused state. And she said she was going to try that. But I think part of that also comes down to she's talking about different things where she has ADHD and some of the executive dysfunction on a daily basis. But what I wanted to talk to you about was I know that with some of the women that I've had conversations with around setting personal boundaries is not only setting them, but actually enforcing them because as well as holding themselves accountable. So we talk about the accountability piece, right? And honoring the boundaries that we've set for ourselves. And again, whether it's with clients, our teams, with our family members, and again, with ourselves, making sure that the boundaries we set for ourselves, we hold ourselves to it. So what would you say is how bringing it back to you, because I know this is what you do and how you help people to really thrive in whatever role that they're in. How do you personally navigate the fine line between being accessible and protecting your energy, holding yourself accountable to the things you say you're going to do?
That is a great question. And I know you specialize in this area too. So I would love to hear your response as well. One of the ways this worked most effectively for me is identifying what is my why behind it. Like if we look at big picture and my goal is give me an example of something that one of your clients has gone through or a challenge that they're up against where they're not holding themselves accountable to that.
Yeah, I think it's not being able to like speak their voice and say I'm not available because that's a fear of not being approachable or not being a go-to person or being seen as that they're not someone who could be counted on. That's a lot that I hear.
I hear that all the time too. And as a recovering people pleaser, this one's near and dear to my heart. What is the culture you're really wanting to create within your team? Are you telling your team to set the boundaries that you're not holding for yourself? When we look at leadership, we can have the best message to deliver to somebody, but if we're not actually embodying the principles the strategies, the tools, the recommendations that we're giving, who's actually going to listen to us at the level that we're wanting them to, right? You want for your team member, for them to be able to, make sure that they can get to their son's basketball game or their daughter's birthday party. But if you're not highlighting that same thing, where is the integrity in that? And so sometimes it comes down to like, I'll actually write a list. Why is this actually important to me to maintain a healthy boundary in? Who will it help if I do maintain this boundary? And who would it hurt if I don't? That who would it hurt can be massive, because when we start to look at, especially who's following us as a leader, who would it hurt if I don't maintain this boundary, but I'm expecting or hoping or wanting my team to maintain their boundaries? It's actually hurting the very people that I'm trying to help, because I'm showing them that it's okay for you, but I don't actually embody that. So follow me, do what I do, and don't hold your boundaries either. Who else will it hurt? Your child, your spouse, your friends, your family, ultimately your own well-being. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves first, we actually can't take care of somebody else. And so identifying that why as to why it's so important, impactful, and imperative can make a massive difference in us giving ourselves permission to actually do the things that we know are going to be best.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I truly agree with you. And I think one of the things that I do, especially I talk a lot about this, is specifically on a call I was on with someone, was they were talking about how their calendar is so full. They found that they usually like backload their week, meaning everything is at the end of the week, all their meetings, all their client calls, everything is at the end of the week, thinking that, well, the first couple of days of the week, I'm free to do the other things that I need to get done, but not realizing that the backloading it's just draining them. And by the time the weekend rolls around, well, you don't feel like you want to do anything. You're exhausted. And so what I had suggested is, what's on your calendar? Like really take a look, not just a daily thing, not just a week. I said to her, just pull out your calendar for just the next 30 days and see what you've put on there that's on there every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we'll just talk about 5 days. And what has been sitting there in stone for all of that time? And how have you structured your time? Because what she's found is she's had maybe a networking meeting, and then she'll have an hour accountability call with somebody, and then she will have a call with a client, and then she'll do something else. And she's giving herself all of these great meetings that she thinks she can actually hold up to, but realizing at the end of it that that's the time is fine, that you've set the time because you have the time, but what about the energy that actually supports the time? And so when I said to her, like, take a look at your calendar and see what you actually have on there that is there every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and how have you structured your week for each of those weeks of the month? And are you back and loading the ends of your week? And is this necessary? And is it really in alignment with what you're trying to achieve? It's one of the things of what I really have started talking about, doing like a yes audit, where you're like asking yourself, is this actually in alignment with what I'm doing right now? And being okay to say if it's a yes or a no or not right now. But holding yourself accountable is the other thing, right? Saying, yes, this is my boundary around this. So I said to her, do a life audit, because this is the only way you're going to be able to find out like why you're draining your energy every week. Because most of the time, and I'm sure you've had this conversation with people before, what do you do during the day? How much time do you think you're spending on your business or your whatever those things that you're working on? And a lot of the time, people actually cannot come up with an accurate number because they think that they're doing certain things. They think they're spending a certain amount of time, but they're actually wasting a lot more time and their energy on things that really aren't important or actually are not productive. It's just busy. And that's where the term that busy work comes from, because we're just filling the time. So yeah, for me personally, how I navigate is I make sure that I'm having clarity like on what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, how it's going to fit into my week, how many meetings I'm going to allow myself to have every day. And then knowing that if something else comes along, is like I take myself through a 3-question filter and just asking myself, is it in alignment? Is it out of obligation? What am I trading by saying yes instead of no? And allowing myself then to say, okay, is this something that I really can do? Or do I really just want to have that white space for myself to recharge and protect my energy? Because I know what kind of person I am. And I know that my energy can be drained. So that's really how I approach it for myself, as well as when I work with someone, is helping them to like look at their calendar. Your calendar's so telling. It's probably the
Right.
one thing, right, that will tell you how you're living your life, what you're focusing on. So yeah, definitely.
I love those questions that you asked too. And I, I always like the yes audit along with a no audit.
Mm,
I say no to this. What will that allow me to say yes to?
yeah.
And something I give to my clients a lot, which some of them follow really well. And it's amazing what happens when you take the time to do this, because it suddenly exposes all of these areas of opportunity that you didn't realize you had to be able to reallocate to those things that you should be saying yes to. But setting, again, with a timer for 1 week, just for 1 week, set a timer every 15 minutes and keep a notebook or a, notepad on your computer and actually write down every 15 minutes when that goes off, what was I actually doing and for how long? Because within that 15-minute block, it's a lot harder for us to forget what we were doing. Being 100% honest with yourself. Oh, was I scrolling on social media? Did I reread this email 15 times before I hit send? Or, was I ruminating over something, that a conversation that just happened that I wish I would have handled differently? What am I really doing? Because once we start to identify the patterns within what's really going on, that's when we can make little shifts. Whether that's, we have distractions all the time, external as well as internal. And so many people don't recognize the internal distractions that's really pulling away our focus. And so when you're doing those work blocks, even paying attention to, okay, I was working on this thing, but I was probably 70% focused, 50% focused, because I kept replaying something, or, oh, I need to do this other thing, or I need to do something else. And so being totally honest with ourselves and saying, this is actually what's going on. Now, how do we come up with a game plan to be able to address those things, to open up 5, 10, even 15 to 20 hours a week of additional time? I had one client who, a CEO of an international company, and he traveled all the time for work. And when he was in town for his primary office, he wanted to be really accessible to everybody, to your question earlier. Didn't want to shut anybody out. And we actually established a rounding routine for him so that he was able to be present, answer questions, but also time block it effectively so he wasn't getting all of those disruptions constantly. We had a communication plan for him of, this is what you're telling and sharing with your team as to why these blocks of time, they're, being asked to let you be fully focused on your work so that you can be more present with them later. And then during these blocks of time, I will be rounding on this department this department this day and time, etc. Having everybody keep a list of what questions they had, and then he would go and answer them. He ended up going from not leaving the office before 9 o'clock most nights to, his goal was making it home before 6 o'clock, so leaving by 5:30 at least 3 nights a week. After implementing just that one tool, plus maybe 2 or 3 other minor strategies, he was going home 3 to 4 nights a week by 5:30. And this was somebody who had worked, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. for decades. So little
Wow.
make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I love the fact that sometimes we just need someone from the outside to see it, because we normalize the things that we do. Like we normalize it. Like, as I was saying, I came from a corporate background. I'm working in the legal industry. I was a paralegal, legal assistant, then paralegal for a long, long time. And I normalized that this was how it was. I would work long hours, go to work early in the morning, come home late at night, and bring home work on the weekends. That was just normalized. And then I started pushing back because I just didn't feel good and didn't want that lifestyle anymore. But a lot of times people just normalize that as like, this is the way it is. And so they end up, I guess you would say, just, they start to, for lack of a better word, hate their job, when really if there was a lifestyle change and putting in boundaries, and like as you were saying, he's leaving work 5:30 for 3-4 nights a week, whereas before it was 9 p.m. and now he's structured it. And it does come down to structure. I truly believe there's so much freedom in structure. People look at the word structure thinking it's limiting, but it's actually empowering when you have a structure that you can follow that empowers you, that empowers your well-being. So yeah, I love that you shared that. So I want to shift for a moment to burnout because it's something a lot of women I've spoken with have. It's not really been on their radar until they're deep into burnout, because most of the time they're talking about the symptoms. I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I'm distracted, I'm not focused, I'm not motivated. And they are just saying like, oh, well, that could be because I didn't sleep well last night, or I've had company, or, there's all kinds of excuses based around the symptoms, but they're not looking at the actual patterns that they've been doing, like maybe for the last couple of weeks, working late every night, falling into bed at 11 p.m. after working on a project and trying to shut their brain off. So with that being said, I know you help leaders and entrepreneurs operate at peak performance. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about high performance that actually can lead to burnout instead of success?
Oh, that is a great question. The ones that I see most frequently are so I work primarily with healthcare. Surgeons, especially, are taught that, not taught directly, like somebody actually sits down and tells them this, but again, that we lead by doing. And so it's almost this rite of passage of working constantly, being available 100% of the time, and never setting those personal boundaries. And we think that that is actually what makes us valuable as a leader, as a physician, as a person of authority. And it's actually the opposite, because when we're hitting burnout, and you mentioned that a lot of people don't recognize that they're in it until it is almost rock bottom. And that's such a frequent phenomenon, which I think some of it needs to be that we just have more conversations like what you and I are having right now. But once you're starting to see, oh, okay, I'm not as energized as I used to be, or I'm, more frustrated, or feeling like I can't have boundaries because what are they going to think of me, or, what expectations am I placing on myself? First and foremost, it's starting out with identifying what that root cause of the burnout really is. Is it actually that you have too much work, or were you able to do the time audit and find out how many minutes per day are actually going towards truly non-productive things? Is it that you have too much work, or is it that you're not fully present, engaged, and tying your personal mission into the work that you're doing? And we were talking about decision fatigue earlier. With burnout, a lot of it can be compassion fatigue or misalignment of my personal goals or my personal vision and mission, disconnecting from the work that I'm doing and how that actually ties into what feeds my soul personally. When we have a strong enough why, we can reconnect to that passion and that purpose. It changes, or can change, the experience that we have with the exact same type of work. But it all comes down to the meaning that we're giving to every single situation. And so the thing that I have every single one of my clients start with is, why am I doing what I do? Who am I helping? How is this actually contributing to the legacy that I want to leave? And what about what I do brings me the most joy? Keeping that on a notepad somewhere, or computer or phone, where you can reference it frequently, read it every single day. This is my why. And connect to it emotionally. Like, what is it really about this work that got me out of bed when I first started? And what are the things that I need to be changing, shifting, learning, doing differently to help me stay fully engaged and excited about the work that I'm doing? So, what things are draining me? Is it because I'm actually not setting boundaries and not doing the things outside of work that bring me joy? So it's depleting everything else in my life? Or is it that I'm putting so much of my value on how many hours that I work that nobody else is even expecting me to do? What is that reason why I'm starting to not be as engaged or not be as satisfied, excited, energized by what I'm doing? And then really shifting to the how. Like, what is one step that I can take to better manage my time? What is one little shift that I can make to optimize my energy? If I'm feeling tired and depleted every day, but I haven't been working out, guess what? That extra hour that you spent in the office actually takes away from the entire number of productive hours that you're spending had you just spent 30 minutes in the gym getting a really good workout on. And there's so much science that backs this up, but we often justify it in our minds of, oh, if I'm just working harder or more, I'll actually be better and accomplish more. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. I love how you brought that up because a lot of people think that the harder I work, the more I'm going to succeed. Harder you work, the better your success. And that's not true. And I'm sure that you get somebody in front of you who is like, the multi-billionaires. I'm sure, yes, of course, they work hard, but they also know how to delegate. They know how to ask for help. They know how to take care of themselves. They actually step back, at least most of them. Most of the
Yeah,
women, when you hear of the women, yeah, the women that I follow, like when you actually hear them speak about their life and they really talk about how, yeah, I have to take care of me first because I know, again, like as you've said, if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't really show up the best of ourselves. And I think even though people say, oh, like self-care, for example, people look at the word self-care as it's just a buzzword and most people don't recognize it. It's not about the fluff of self-care, which, I think the fluff of self-care, like mani-pedis and massages and getting your hair done and going out for dinner, like a nice dinner, little spa vacations, those are great because they're celebrating you. But I'm talking about the functional, foundational self-care, like having the hard stops to your day, to making sure you're taking those breaks every 50 minutes and making sure that you recharge, or making sure you set yourself up for a good night's rest at the end of the day so you're not falling into bed after scrolling social media or just working on a large project and you can't shut your brain off. Like things like that. And I really feel like it's so important that women and men, of course, as well, but mostly women listen to this podcast, Women in Business. It's really about making sure that you're structuring your days, your time, your energy around, again, what fuels your why, your joy, why you do what you do. Why do you roll out of bed every morning, hopefully excited to start a new day into doing what you're doing? And if you've lost that joy, what has happened for you to have lost that joy? Because obviously there could be a way of how you're using your time and energy that's not productive and it's not, lending to your overall well-being. So I love that you've touched on so much today. I have a final question for you. Leadership and business success are evolving rapidly. And I know there's so many people out there that are getting into speaking and really a lot of incredible women out there that have just got such an amazing message. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today, because I really, we had this great coffee chat before you came on the show, and I really felt that you would really be such an amazing guest to pour into the listeners. So what new skills or mindsets do you believe would be the most beneficial for women who are in leadership roles and business in general to help them stay ahead of the game and continue thriving into the next decade?
That you are on point with your question. That is a tremendous question. From a mindset perspective, it's choosing to look at every single opportunity as an opportunity for growth. A lot of my very high performing female clients who are moms and trying to juggle the million hats that we all juggle, they struggle with seeing themselves for who they truly are. And what I mean by that is they see themselves through the lens of what society shows them they should be. And I put should in air quotes. Because when we take that step back and stop comparing ourselves to the version that we think somebody else expects of us, and we can start to really look inside at what makes us amazing, what makes us powerful, what makes us magnetic and strong and an incredible leader, and we start focusing more on those pieces, every interaction that we have with somebody else is actually dependent, or our experience of that interaction is dependent on the lens through which we see ourselves. So, what is my relationship with self, first and foremost? Because if I see myself as that capable, strong, amazing leader, the conversations that I have with other people get filtered through that lens. But if internally I'm actually sitting here criticizing myself, saying, gosh, I can't communicate effectively. Nobody respects me. Like, I don't deserve X, Y, or Z. I'm not good enough. All of the things that so many of us have said before, right? We experience every interaction through that lens. And so it's even easier to become more critical of ourselves when we're already that negative voice inside telling ourselves that we're not good enough. Somebody could have a very nonchalant question that their intention is, I don't know, and I really just want an answer for this. But if we're looking at ourselves as, I'm not competent, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, we can interpret that very easily as they think I'm not competent, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And taking that step back to always ask the question, what meaning am I giving to this situation? Is it 100% accurate? And if not, how do I actually determine what is real? What was that person's true intention? And how do I change my relationship with self so that I can see it from the way that they meant it? Or even if I can't ask them, it was a random passing conversation with somebody that you don't know well, other reason why you can't actually get clarification, ask, is the meaning that I'm giving to this situation the most empowering meaning I can give? Or can I think of one possible other reason why they may have said what they said? And then choose to believe that whatever the most empowering meaning is actually what was meant, so that you can stop ruminating over it and start to really see yourself through the lens of how worthy, amazing, good, strong, powerful, all of those positive characteristics that you really are. Because that is
Yeah.
the shifts that we can make. And that's something that women so often have never been taught. We hear all the time, oh, you are good enough. You're perfect just as you are. Well, it's one, perfection doesn't exist. Everybody's definition is totally different. So who even cares? But two, it's, what do I need to do to get good with myself and actually start to believe those things about myself? And first and foremost, it comes with maintaining our integrity with self, setting those boundaries, executing them, and making sure that we're prioritizing effectively, prioritizing us so that we can best take care of everybody else.
Yeah. And I also like to say that sometimes we perceive someone else's intentions. Like you said, if you're coming from that energy, you're not in a good space, then you could, have that belief that they mean it in a certain way. And that's the meaning that you're giving it. And really, you can even just say, like, even is this something that has to be true? Like, is it true and does it have to be true? Do I want it to be true? And if I don't want it to be true, then how can I look at it from a different perspective? And how am I feeling? Because right now, I mean, it's tapping into how you're feeling. If you're, like you were saying, in a space where you're not feeling good about yourself, and then you're in a conversation with someone and they're asking you a question, and you're automatically reverting back to like, oh, I am not good enough. I'm not confident in my answers, or I'm not competent to even be able to, or trustworthy or worthy and deserving to actually be in this position. Like, if you go back to that because it's how you're feeling, it's allowing yourself to get out of that space somehow. And, again, does it have to be true? Because it doesn't have to be true, right? You can always reframe it. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I have loved this conversation today.
A
So
lot of
thank
fun.
you. Yeah, I really loved hearing about your journey, the work you're doing, your leadership, your business development, your high performance coaching, what you're doing with the people that you work with. and getting your perspective on what it takes to lead with confidence, set boundaries, especially boundaries that we hold ourselves accountable to, and be able to sustain success without burnout, right? Because I think that's really important. Again, people don't look at burnout until they're full on in it and trying to figure out all the ways that they can get out. And it takes time. I've been there many times, so I know what that feels like, and it's why I talk a lot about it. So I really, truly believe what you shared today is going to really resonate deeply with the women who are listening today and maybe who are looking to step into their next level leadership without sacrificing their well-being. So, LynAnn, I really appreciate you for sharing today, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to offer your guests a free gift too. If they'd like to look at the areas of their life that can really help them support their overall well being as well as their long term success, we have a free assessment. It's usually $97. Give it to them for free. Just go to healthcareelevation.com/HPI for high performance indicator. And HPI actually has to be lowercase. Weird tech thing. But what that will help you do is identify the areas of your life that you can start to put more focus on growing, learning, and developing new skills in that will make the biggest impact to help you prioritize your well-being, your leadership, your strengths, and really achieve greater levels of sustained success without burnout.
Oh, I love it. Well, there you go. I think that's amazing. To the listeners, if you would like to connect with LynAnn directly and learn more about her work, you can find her contact information in the show notes. I'll make sure that that link to the free assessment will be in there as well so that you can get access to that if you are so inclined to learn a little bit more about yourself. Again, I think learning is growing, so I think it's a great opportunity. Remember, every choice that you make to prioritize yourself and align with what truly matters isn't just about success. It's about creating a life and business that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. Own your path, trust your decisions, and step into the success and fulfillment that you are meant for. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily podcast from Electrocast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electrocast. Electrocast.